Okay, now we are going to have some questions and we're going to have an open forum, so I might just invite down our panellists if I could.
I was a bit concerned to hear in the survey that some authors were having problems with persuading their publisher to convert. Why would the panel think that would be an issue in this day and age? Surely the publisher might be a bit slow to convert. We all know there's an issue with backless conversion and a bit of a wait list. But it is only one feedback, but it seemed to be saying there was a bit of frustration trying to deal with their publisher to get their books on.
And I can just back that up anecdotally, looking through the free-form responses. That was a common theme, yeah. So any comments?
Well, I think it just really depends on who the publisher is. I think it's not surprising that people are finding it hard to get backlist stuff up and running. I know personally we've had cases where we've wanted publishers to put certain things maybe back in print, digitise them. I think at the moment it's mostly to do with issues in the publishing houses and actually them grappling with the technology themselves and how they how it's kind of working in the company, because a lot of publishing companies aren't actually integrating the digital kind of conversion into the normal editorial process. So the people that would be responsible for sort of organising that maybe aren't as informed as they should be, and there's probably a backlog of a whole heap of other things. I mean, I think that's probably the issue at the moment. I don't know if anyone else feels differently, but... Okay.
Oh, I was going to say, I think the answer's in the survey results, because in the survey we just saw that 26% of the publishers who responded to the survey don't have a digital strategy at all. So there's going to be a lot of authors that are caught up in that gap and are going to struggle to work out what's the best pathway for them moving forward if they want their books to be digitised. And also, I guess, there's, as Pippa said, there's a whole range of different issues bundled up in that question. Some authors, they might be referring to books that are quite old. We've had a lot of members at the Writers' Centre who've come to us to say, I've got titles from 15, 20 years ago that I want to have reissued as ebooks, and in some cases they don't even have a digital file of that. So the conversion issues for those titles are different to the conversion issues for files that have been published recently, and then all of that ties in with the workflow of the publishing company. So, yeah, what's the price of a car?
Can I just ask a follow-up question? Does anyone think that industry groups or government could be playing a stronger role in this, or is it really up to markets and market forces to decide these issues?
I think it's up to publishers. I mean, if they don't have a digital strategy, I think it's pretty frightening. I also think that, the introduction of government agencies could then put another spanner in the works. I mean, I do think that editorial people and people within the all across the company need to be trained digitally and work out how they actually, can get a whole company approach. But I mean, I'm not sure about government involvement.
There's currently in the industry, even for print, there's a lack of all kinds of standards for just the exchange of digital information in relation to print books. So I can certainly see government playing a role in convincing the industry to adapt universal standards, which would be excellent. Personally, that'd be great.
Yes, I just wanted to ask you, Michael, about that slide on which people's strategies were commented. There was a lot of laughter about the fact that that number of publishers didn't have a digital strategy. I'm confused about why that was funny. And secondly, there were only 350 out of 2,090 people who responded to those 3 or 4 slides that were quite difficult questions, and then suddenly 1,200 were able to very easily click what appliances they used. So I'm just wondering, do we need to be a little bit cautious about these statistics?
The reason there's less people answering this question, the questions more down the end of my presentation were where everybody responded. So the reason we've only got 179 here, there was 400 publishers roughly who answered the survey. So it depends what route you took in the survey, and that's why the numbers vary on how many people answered the specific questions. But most of the questions were mandatory, depending on the route you took. As to why people laughed, maybe it was a nervous response, I'm not sure.
I'm just about to sign an amendment about digital rights with my publisher, and thank God they do. They're interested in publishing it digitally. What is the royalties, across the board for, this is non-fiction, I'm just wondering.
25% would be
25
standard.
Of net,
Yeah.
20, of net.
I'd like to ask David Gaunt whether Glebe Books has a digital strategy.
I wish we did. Basically, with the exception of a handful of individual bookshops in the country, and Dymocks and the not much lamented Red Group, there are no digital platforms freely available, widely available I should say, not freely available, at retail level in Australia. And probably including Emmett would know as much, if not more, about this than me, with his knowledge of bookish. But there's simply there isn't enough content for us to access, and B, there's nowhere for us to buy it from. At the moment, of course, as you'd all be aware from the physical supply chain, author, publisher, distributor, retailer, the same doesn't apply in an e-book world. So I can't buy it from anywhere, and we're being left behind. There is a very good pilot program that's been run in collaboration between Bookish, the Melbourne-based e-book provider, content provider, and Readings, which looks very promising. And I might have something more to say about that. But generally speaking, we're waiting, and while we're waiting, we're dying.
I'm trying to wrap my head around the problems as to why publishers are not quite grappling with it and don't have a strategy. And so for me, I see issues around multiple devices and multiple formats. Digital rights management appears to be something that is an issue, and I just wonder how that plays out in terms of the different, because I know you have territories in publishing, so I'm just wondering, am I completely off the beam here, or?
I'll address those. One of which is actually, I think, the different devices and different formats, which is something I hear often. I'm a little confused by that. There are really only two formats going at the moment. You've got EPUB and the Amazon format, so AZW or Mobi. So really, those are only two. There are apps across all the different devices. They move across them really easily. So actually, I don't see that as really much of a problem at all. Digital rights management is a twofold issue. So there's DRM that attaches to a file, so that users are limited in what they can do with a file. I'm personally against digital rights management, although I'm speaking personally, not on behalf of Spunk in any way, or anyone we do business with. I think it will be removed ultimately from ebooks down the track. But in terms of territoriality, what I would just say in terms of where we're going, I'd look at Bloomsbury as a good model, who's just recently announced that they only want to acquire global rights for their books in English, German, and Arabic. So that's their requirement for authors.
Cross-print and digital?
Yes.